Welcome to the Connors Corner segment of Ask the Lawyer. 1955. Our next guest came up with the Brooklyn Dodgers. He won a World Series game that year, played in another 3 World Series after that, and he coached the Detroit Tigers pitching staff in the 1984 World Series, and he managed the San Francisco Giants to a World Series. And that's our next guest, Roger Craig. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
We're doing pretty good. Now, as I mentioned before, we're taping this interview in Brooklyn. Where are you originally from, and how did you get involved with the Brooklyn Dodgers?
Well, I'm originally from Durham, North Carolina, the Backer Road, and I was scouted by Branch Rickey's brother, Frank Rickey, and I signed with the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1950 and went to Valdosta, Georgia, then to Newport News, and then I went in the Armed Service for 2 years and came out and pitched in Class B ball that year in the playoffs. And the next year, I remember Pepper Martin was the manager of Portsmouth. We beat Portsmouth, Newport News, and said, this guy's going to be in the big league soon. And the next year, I was pitching in the World Series.
So what was it like? You're a rookie. You're pitching against the Yankees in the 1955 World Series.
I'd been up there almost a half a year. In fact, I think it was yesterday was the first year I pitched in 61 years ago. The first game I pitched in the major leagues was against with Brooklyn against the Cincinnati Reds. Yeah, pitching in the World Series, I'd pitched a half a year in the big leagues, and I was really surprised when they started me. I was warming up in the bullpen just to get some work done on the third or fourth day game or something, and Joe Becker, the pitching coach, said, sit down. I said, well, I need to throw some. He said, no, sit down. So after the game's over, Walter also walked up to me and said, you start tomorrow. I said, oh, my God, thank you very much. I can't wait to go. So anyway, that's the way it was, and I wasn't too nervous. I pitched a game. I think I pitched, 6 innings, and we won the game. When we went downtown New York, I had my mother was there and a couple of my brothers, and we ended up at that great boxers, had a restaurant there. I can't think of his name. What was his name? Great boxer. And anyway, Jack Dempsey. He came over my table. He knew I was there, and he said, what can I fix for you? I said, you wouldn't have no country ham, would you? I'm from North Carolina. He said, I sure will. I'll bring you some out. So he did. So we had a great time. And my mother and my brothers, when we went out to New York City, and they saw my name up on the thing where it go running across the big building up there, and they were all excited. But it was a great day and a wonderful honor to win a World Series game my first year in the major leagues, and that's the only year the Brooklyn Dodgers ever won.
Now, you had some great teammates on that 1955 team. Do you have any thoughts or recollections about them?
Oh yes. In fact, the first major league game I pitched was in Brooklyn. I got called out. In fact, Tommy Lasorda and I pitched we were playing for Montreal, a AAA club for the Brooklyn Dodgers, and we pitched a doubleheader, both shutouts in Havana, Cuba, and I got called to the big leagues. And in fact, I got called the next day after I pitched. The AAA manager, Greg Malevy, called me up to my room. I said, "Oh, what did I do?" He said, he said, sit down on the table. I said, oh my God, I'm gonna get sent back to the AAA or double A or something. He said, you're pitching Sunday. He said, well, you already told me that. You didn't have to tell me that again. He said, no, you're pitching in Brooklyn. And then I called my wife from Havana, Cuba, and telling her I'm going to the big leagues. She said, you didn't realize how much this phone call is going to cost from Havana, Cuba to Montreal, Canada? I said, honey, I'm going to the big leagues. And she was worried more about the phone call. But anyway, that's the way it started. And then when I got to Brooklyn, I walked in that clubhouse and I saw Jackie Robinson, Gil Hodges, Pee Wee, Duke Snyder, Carl Erskine, Campanella, Newcomb, and all those great players. I'm saying to myself, I don't belong here. Well, anyway, I pitched that game that day, next day, and the clubhouse guy, I said, where's my locker? He said, right over here, sir, and had a big 10-penny nail. So we had in Brooklyn, I don't know if you ever remember going in the club, but you probably, but anyway, it was a real small clubhouse, and the lockers were real small back in those days, and it was just a 10-penny nail. I said, okay. But after I pitched the game and won, I come back, I had my own locker, so that was my kind of the great things that happened that wonderful day. It was July the 16th.
You stayed with the Dodgers for a few years. You moved out to the West Coast with them. You had a good year in 1959 when they won the pennant and World Series again.
But what happened there, the last game of the season in 1957, I'd had a so-so year, and we were playing in Philadelphia. It was a cold, sleeting night. It was the last game of the season, and I pitched, and something popped in my shoulder, and I pitched about 7 or 8 innings. So I didn't tell nobody, but the season's over, so I didn't tell nobody but my wife. I went to spring training early and threw and got some balls and got thrown against a wall down there in Dodger Town, but my arm never came back, to make a long story short. So I spent most of that year in 58 in St. Paul, and came back. Then I went to the big leagues and pitched real good in '59. And we played the White Sox in the World Series. I didn't pitch too good in the World Series, but I pitched good up until that time.
Let me ask you, going back to '55, who were some of the batters you faced in the 1955 World Series?
Oh gosh, all of Mickey Mantle and Yogi, and in fact, I think I got a base hit. I was a bad hitter, and I got a base hit off of Whitey Ford in that game. Elston Howard. Remember the first pitch I threw a high fastball to Elston Howard, and I was a little bit kind of squeezed the ball, a little bit nervous. And he swung and missed. I said, God, if he can't hit that one, he won't hit my good fastball. So that settled me down, and I felt that, well, I had the good enough stuff to beat these guys. And they had, I think Herb Norton was on that ball club. They had a Mantle and Maris went on that club, but they had a great hitting lineup.
A lot of us in New York, what we remember you from is your time with the New York Mets.
Yes, that's okay.
Yeah, well, your manager was Casey Stengel. What was it like playing for Casey Stengel?
It was a lot of fun. I don't know, for some reason he always called me Mr. Craig. I think he didn't know my first name, so they called me Mr. Craig. But he was fun to play with. He was, and as the years went on, and when I was pitching for the Mets, and I was pitching a lot, and even though my record was bad, I had a lot of complete. In fact, I think I had about 27 complete games there in my 2 years, and but we pitched on the fourth day, and on the day I was supposed to throw in between, he said, Mr. Craig, I don't want you to throw, just in case we got a lead, I want you to come in and pitch the ninth inning. I said, okay, no problem. But anyway, I did that a couple of times, but he was really, as you well know, the media loved him, and he was just a lot of fun to play for, and I really enjoyed it. And he told me, both years I pitched there, even though my record was bad, he said, you call me after the season's over, and I'm going to get you a raise the way you pitch. And I called him, and I forgot who the general manager, maybe Bill DeWitt. George Weiss, that's who it was, yeah. And he said, I got a raise both years. So, but Casey was a lot of fun to play with. He kind of lost, at that time he was pretty old, and I think, in fact, I remember at home plate he had his 75th birthday, and they gave him a real big cake, about 5 foot tall, big cake, and they was presenting it to him at home plate, and they called him got on the microphone, they called him to the home plate, and he said, some of you guys come up there and help me bring this cake back. And Faye Throneberry, who's playing first base and didn't have the greatest hands in the world, he jumped up and said, I'll go help you, Mr. Stengel. He said, no, you might drop it. It's somebody else to go out there. But that's what it was. But he was one of the great things I remember about him. I remember they always had the big opening day. They had not opening day, but they had the big meeting, not a meeting, but representing the ball club, introducing the ball club. It's a thing they had in New York every year. So Casey was talking, and he was going down the lineup, and he went down the starting lineup, and he went. I know I was a pitcher, and Hobie Landreth and Gil Hodges and Felix Mantilla. I think Charlie Neal was the second baseman, maybe Don Zimmer the third baseman, and he was going around memorizing all these guys. And he had Frank Thomas in left field, Richie Ashman in center field, and now he got to the right fielder, and he couldn't think of his name. And he kept going on and said, now, right fielder's a good, he's left-handed hitter, and he's played with the Cincinnati Reds and this and that, and he couldn't, we all knew he couldn't think of his name. He said, and he'll be ready when the bell rings. And that's his name, Gus Bell. That was so funny. Yeah, but he was a lot of fun to play for.
Now, after that, you got traded to the Cardinals, and that was a pretty good break for you.
Yeah, I went from a last place club, and I won a game in the World Series. And that was a funny not a funny situation, because I pitched pretty good for the Cardinals, relief and starting. And this game was the fourth or fifth game, I forgot. And Johnny Keane was the manager of the Cardinals, and he told me before the game, he said, now, when Ray Sadek is going to start, he said, I want you to start throwing in the bullpen. I said, Mr. King, why didn't you start? He said, no, Ray won 25 games, and he deserved. I said, okay. So I go down there and put something, and I don't think Ray got but one hit, maybe one guy out of two. And I came in the first inning, and Bob Uecker always tells the story. He was in the bullpen. He says Roger jumped over that 10-foot fence in the bullpen just to get a chance to pitch, and I pitched 4 2/3 in, allowed one hit, and then God, what's the guy's name? He pitched the last 4 innings and didn't allow a hit. Ron Taylor, and then he became the doctor for Montreal for a long time, and might still
medical
be.
Doctor, yeah.
Yeah, he was, yeah. But anyway, that was between the two of us. I allowed one hit. He didn't allow one hit. We had 8 2/3 in without allowing only one hit. So that was a great thing. And and to this day, every time I see Ron, we have a lot of fun talking about it. But that was another very important game in my life. I beat the Yankees twice, and about 10 years apart. One was in Ebbsfield, and one was in Yankee Stadium. Yeah.
Now that second team, Mickey Mantle's still there. Yogi Berra's the manager at that point. Roger Maris is there. There's a lot of other great ball players there.
Oh yeah. They had to turn over their ball club. Yeah. They naturally still had a great ball club. And it seemed like Yogi played forever. I remember I threw him. I think it was in the first game in Yankee Stadium. I had 2 strikes on him. I said, I'm gonna bounce this curveball and get him out, and I threw him a curveball, and it would have hit home plate if he hadn't swung at it. He swung at it and hit a double to right center field. But they said you can't pitch him in his way because he's going to hit it no matter where you throw it.
Now, who are some of the guys you played with on the Cardinals? I mean, we know Ken Boyer, Bill White, Dick Grote.
Bob Uecker was one of the catchers. What's the guy that still announced it with the Cardinals?
Tim McCarver.
No. Well, Tim was there.
Tim McCarver,
but
yeah.
Then the other guy's still there. He was a left fielder. And then we had Kurt Flood. And the right fielder was, the guy that just had his amputated. Lou Brock was the right fielder. And then we had a pretty good pitching staff. I can't think of all the guys that were there. But Bob Gibson was one of them. And what a great pitcher he was. I think we had the left-hander was Ray Sadek, and then we had another a real good pitcher. He pitched a long time with Philadelphia, but we had a good ball club, and so it was a great World Series, naturally.
After your playing days were over, you became a pitching coach, and you were one of the most established and well-respected pitching coaches in the game. And in 1984, you got a chance to be in the World Series again. Detroit.
Yeah, when I was right at the end of my career, I never thought about managing. I wanted to be a pitching coach when I retired. And right at the end of my career, which was, I forgot, 1964, I forgot. But anyway, I used to go around to guys like Robin Roberts and ask them different questions about, what was their main thought when they were pitching, and Warren Spahn and all the great pitchers. And I'll never forget what Robin Roberts told me. He said, when I throw to that catcher, I don't throw to the glove. I try to throw through the glove. And that really made a lot of sense. And I used it a lot when I was a pitching coach. And I enjoyed being a pitcher. I was a pitching coach for, 13 years, I think. And then, that time would spark in Detroit. And we had a great young ball club at that time with Alan Trammell and Gibson and Whitaker and Lance Parrish and Jack Morris. We had a really good ball club.
You got a chance to manage in the World Series a little bit later on.
Yes, I did during the earthquake. You know, we were playing really good at that time, and but Oakland had a great ball club, and they naturally had a better club than we did. They had that outstanding pitching staff, and but we lost the first 2 games. Then we came back in Oakland. Then we came back to play at Candlestick, and the game was called off, and we didn't play for 12 days, and it just got. We were playing really good at the end, and I don't know if we'd ever won it or not, but I think we'd have given a lot better run at it if we hadn't had to wait for 12 days to play. In fact, some of the players from both teams said that they ought to call it off and all that, because of the people that lost their lives and things like that on that freeway, Bay Bridge deal. So, as I look back, I was a decent pitcher, and I enjoyed being a pitching coach, and I pitched in the World Series and coached in the World Series and managed in the World Series. So, pretty good for a country boy from Tobacco Road.
Right, and of course, 61 years ago, you started with the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Yeah, my first game in the major leagues, and the first game I ever saw in the major, and I pitched a complete game victory. After the game was over, Walter also walked up to me and said, "Kid, you got to go to your family in Montreal." I said, "My wife and baby's up." Yeah, he said, "Well, go back. You're allowed to go back and get your wife and come back, and you're not going to pitch for 4 days." Back we pitched on the 4th day on it, and I'm asking how to get to the airport, and people said, I said, and one guy was telling me, said, "Well, you got to go take the L train and go underground." So what do you mean I got to go underground? And I was trying to talking to somebody about, how to get there. And Jackie Robinson walked up to me. I'll never forget it. He said, "Come on, kid, I'll give you a ride." I sort of on my way home. And I got in the car, and I was so nervous being around him and knowing what all he'd been through and been from the South myself. And but he never said a word about himself. The only thing he talked about was the game I pitched and what he thought was that I had a chance to be a good major league pitcher and be around a long time and all. And then I found out later on that he didn't. That was not on his way home. He went out of his way to take me home. I never forgot that. In fact, I'm looking at something out on my desk here about a day to remember in the pride of Brooklyn, and that was what it was. That's dated in from Dave Anderson. You remember him? Sports. This is when he picked me up. Yeah, took me out there. But he was a great teammate, and he was a great man. A lot of people don't realize that when he signed the contract, before he signed the contract, Branch Rickey told me, he said, "Now, before you sign this, I got to tell you something." He said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Rickey." He said, "You are not allowed to fight back." And he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm too big. I've been a great competitor. I can't quit doing it." He said, "Well, you're going to have to for a couple of years till you get established." And he did that. But once I got there in '55. I think he came up in, 48 or somewhere in there. And but once he got settled and had a little experience and played 2 or 3 years there, then he started to fight back a little bit, and it was a different story. Because he was such a great competitor. He wasn't afraid of nothing. I've seen him a couple of times. He'd get knocked down, and he'd turn around and tell that catcher. He told the catcher, he said, "Tell him not to do that anymore. If he does, I'm going to run up his back." And if someone do it, he'd bunt the ball hard towards the second baseman, and the pitcher to go field the ball, and he'd run right over that pitcher going to first base, go out of his way to do it. But a lot of things he did that was so. He's just such a great. He couldn't run that good, but he was a great base runner, especially stealing home and going to extra base. I remember in the World Series in Ebbets Field, he hit a double to left field. I forgot who was playing left field for them. Anyway, he kind of rounded second base, and he threw the ball behind. He threw the ball to the second baseman behind him, and Jack had just walked to third base. He was just that intelligent as far as base running was. But he was a great man. He's too bad he died so young. I think he died when he was about 53.
We're going to have to take a short break. We're talking baseball with Roger Craig. Welcome back to Ask the Lawyer with me, Mike Connors. We're talking right now to our guest, Roger Craig, star of the Brooklyn Dodgers in the 1950s, main pitcher of the New York Mets in the early 1960s, pitched in 4 World Series, coached in the World Series, managed in the World Series. We'll continue our conversation with Roger Craig. We had a guy on a couple of weeks ago, Bob Aspermani, who was talking about trying to get Gil Hodges in the Hall of Fame. Do you have any opinion on that, or you played with him more than a few years?
Yeah, Bob Aspermani was a great friend of mine, and to this day he still is. But Gil was he was such a low-key guy. He never said much. He never he was never controversial. He's one of the nicest guys I ever met, and a great defensive first baseman, and he was a good hitter. And I remember sometimes when I was pitching back in those days, the ball was slippery. The umpires didn't rub them up good, and you allowed one of the infielders to rub it up for you. And I'd take a ball and throw it to Gil. He'd just twist it one time, and he'd throw it back to me, and the cover was loose. I mean, he was that strong. His hand was that big. And he was just, when you play for him, he said, play with him, he was so, he could come over and talk to me when I got in trouble and just say something real. He was never got excited. He'd say, hey, this guy, you can get this guy out, no problem. Get it, just throw it, pitch him, low and away, make him hit the ball on me. I'll get it. But he was just like him and Pee Wee were very good at doing stuff like that. But yes, I think Gil Hodges should be in the Hall of Fame. He should be in the Hall of Fame because just of his character. He was such a wonderful man, a wonderful wife, Irene.
By the way, when you were playing in Brooklyn, where'd you live?
We lived, actually, it was close to. My wife's sitting out there. She remember that better than me. Close to the Staten Island Ferry, somewhere where it docked. It was really close to. I can't think of the name of that neighborhood, but
Bay
a lot
Ridge.
of guys live. Bay Ridge. Bay Ridge. Bay Ridge.
Bay Ridge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where it was, right around in there. And we lived in one of those, like a little apartment building. We lived on the top floor and all, and I had a lawn was like big as a card table. And I used a kid to go, guys, I said, I cut my lawn today. I used a pair of scissors because it was so small, But we had a great restaurant around there, and we pooled and rode together to the ballpark. And so I'd get in the car sometime and then sit with Campy and Gil and Erskine and Snyder, and I was really honored to play with all those guys. They were a great bunch of men. In fact, last year I went back to L.A. They had a reunion of the 1955 Brooklyn Dodgers and the 1965 L.A. Dodgers together. And Newcomb was there, and I was there, and Ed Roebuck. Sandy was there, but he didn't. That was when he was a rookie, I think. I don't know if he pitched much then.
Sandy Koufax.
Sandy Koufax, yeah. It was Don Newcomb and I became close friends all the time, and still are. And he's not doing too well now, but not many of us left. The fact that Erskine couldn't make it for some reason, I got a nice letter from him not long ago. He's 90 years old, and I think the only ones left now are Erskine and myself and Roebuck, Newcomb, and Koufax was there, but he didn't pitch a lot. I can't think of anybody else was there.
Don Drysdale died young?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, he wasn't there anyway that year.
Yeah.
He was
It was next year? Okay.
Yeah. He died when he was gone. I think he died when he was 53, and that was his number he wore all his life. He died in a hotel room somewhere. I forgot where it was. What a great competitor he was. Him and Koufax were really unbelievable. And I remember that year they held out for $100,000 apiece, and now they'd be making $50 million.
Right. Now, talking about a competitor, I remember when I was a little kid one time, you had an altercation with Orlando Cepeda.
Yeah, I was pitching with the Dodgers, and actually I was pitching for the Mets, and we were playing at the Candlestick Park, and it's ironic I ended up managing there. But anyway, Casey told me before the game, he said, Mr. Craig, let me talk to you before you go out and pitch. And how about loosening some of them guys up? They've been digging in and wearing us out. I said, okay, don't worry about it. So I go out there, and I think what inning it was, second or first inning, and Willie Mays was the hitter, and I brushed him back 3 times, and finally I knocked him down. And I'll never forget what he told me one time. He said, Roger, I know you pitched me inside a lot, said, but from now on, throw it to my head because I ain't going to be there. And he was right. Anyway, I walked him, and then Cepeda was the next hitter, and I threw 2 balls inside. I threw one kind of real close to him inside. He kind of picked both arms up and looked at me. So then I hit him right in the side. I didn't really want to hit him or start a fight or anything like that, but I was doing what the manager told me. And then instinctively, then I tried a pickoff play. Our shortstop was Elio Chacon. We had a pickoff play, and I threw the ball to second base, and he Willie slid back into the base, and he kind of, and Willie didn't want to fight. He never got in no fights. He didn't want to fight. He just kind of grabbed Chacon and was wrestling with him, and instinctively I started going towards second base, and I turned around, and here comes Cepeda. And right there, and that's when we got into a little bit, and both of us got our cuts in there and all that. And to this day, when I see him, he hugs me and I hug him, and we laugh about it. He said that was a lot of fun, and said, I know you didn't like to do that, but anyway, that's the way it happened.
Yeah, but I think you were standing and he wasn't at the end, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I remember Ed Bailey, their catcher, jumped me on the back and grabbed both of my arms, and I said, man, let me go. I got no protection. And the one thing I remember, he stepped on my left foot with those spikes like they had back in the old days, and went all the way through my shoe and about a quarter of an inch into my foot. And I still pitched a little bit more after that with that, but my foot was bleeding pretty bad. But then it's amazing that I ended up managing the Giants in Candlestick Park. In fact, they sent me 2 chairs from when they tore the side down, and I got it sitting in my backyard with my daughter made a big picture and all, and it's called Rogers Bullpen, and I got those 2 orange chairs sitting in there, which I'm very proud of.
What'd you do after your baseball career was over?
Well, actually, my last year was with Philadelphia, and Ed Roebuck and I got playing for Gene Mock. We got released the same day and was doing the strike, the airplane strike. We rode a bus to Chicago, and we finally ended up catching a flight out of Chicago. I don't think I coached her. I didn't scout no one. That was in 1964, and I did go to. I went up and pitched a little bit on this AAA club, and Bob Lemon was the manager, and he told me, he said, I want you to coach third base when you're not pitching. I want you to work with these pitches while you're here and all this and that. I said, I'll do whatever you want to. And I said, well, tell me what your signs are at third. So he said, I don't have no signs. Let them do what they want to. And that's the way he was, the way he managed. I'm sure he probably did a lot of that when he was managing the Yankees. But that was in 65, and I don't think I ever went back into professional baseball after that. Well, that's when I went. I went to the Dodgers. Next year, I went to the Dodgers as a minor league coach. Go around the minor leagues and work with the pitchers and all that and the catchers. And then I went to manage Albuquerque, their AAA farm club, for 1 year. And then I think that was in 67 to 68. In 69, the Padres, their first year, I became the pitching coach for the Padres here. And for 4 or 5 years, then I went to pitch I was pitching coach for Houston for a couple of years, and back to the Padres. And then I managed the Padres in 78 and 79. In fact, the first year I managed, we won 84 ball games. But Ray Kroc owned a ball club at that time, and the great guy that started McDonald's, and he got me Raleigh Fingers and Gene Tennis 1 year, and we'd won 84 games. And he said, "How many games do you think you can win?" I said, and before I could answer, he said, "You should win them all." And I thought he was kidding, and he said, "I said, well, sir, if we win 90, if we lose 62 games," he said, "lose 62 games? There's no way you can do that." I said, "Well, we're going to win 100. we're going to be in first place and got a chance to go all the way. But he actually believed, he said, you should win every ball game. And I thought he was kidding, but he wasn't. So, man, he was a brilliant man, but not in baseball.
I got another question. You coached for the Detroit Tigers in 1984, and a guy's been on our show a few times, and a friend of ours, Tom Monahan, owned the team then. Did you ever have any interaction with him?
He wasn't a player, was he?
No, the owner of the Tigers, Tom Monahan.
Yeah.
Domino's Pizza.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'd met him a lot and I talked to him, but I never got, close to him. We didn't see him very much often. Yeah, I remember that pizza boy. We got free pizza.
I just wondered, he wasn't like a George Steinbrenner type of owner then.
No, because we never hardly saw him. In fact, when he come in the clubhouse, nobody hardly knew him. So still somebody said, that's him. And I remember when I pitched for the Mets and lost all those games. A lot of people ask me, even writers, people like yourself, you wouldn't probably do it. They said, are you ashamed of your record there? I said, no, I'm not ashamed. I said, I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed of it because I pitched good. I pitched 27 complete games, and we only won 40 the first year, and I won 10 and all. But we was I was with the Cardinals somewhere. I think we was in the motel having lunch one day, and Bill Beck was sitting in there, and I was sitting there and noticed him, and he looked at me and called me over, and I went over to his table, and he said, I'm going to tell you something. With all these things you went through with the Mets, said, someday you're going to be a good coach or a manager in baseball. I never even thought about it, but I'll never forget that, though.
Well, listen, you're talking about 14 complete games one year, 13 another. Most teams don't have 10 complete games now. A lot of teams don't even have 3 or 4 complete games.
Well, I know. Well, back in the old days, Casey left me in there because he knew I was pitching good, and hopefully we'd get a win. And I heard Casey said he's the best pitcher I got, so what am I going to do? I'm not going to take him out of the game.
Your pitching coach was Red Ruffing then, which is kind of legend from the Yankees in the 30s. Was he an active pitching coach? Or?
No, we had another guy, too, that was there. It was a real big problem. Rogers Hornsby.
Yes, one of the greatest hitters.
They hadn't been coaches in a long time or whatever. They just got them for their name and all. And no, they really didn't. And God bless them. They were great Hall of Famers and all that, but they were not really what you call good coaches. They never spent much time with you. They just tell you go out and run and do this, and they never did get detail. I always thought to myself that if I ever become a pitching coach, I'm gonna work hard to work with every one of my pitchers to make them better. But they didn't do that. They didn't. Back in those days, not only them, but a lot of the older guys like that, they become coaches, but they didn't teach you nothing. They didn't know how to teach. They didn't know how to relay things that they had done and how to do it for us to do.
Thank you very much for sharing your memories. Those of us in Brooklyn and New York greatly appreciate it. And obviously, being a New York Met fan in 1962, you won 10 games. The team won 40 games. To me, that's a tremendous accomplishment. And playing in the major leagues is a tremendous accomplishment. So, and when you did it for years and you were in 4 World Series and you beat the Yankees twice in the World Series, so what more can you have for a career?
Yeah, I know. I was very. In fact, Bob Brinley, who was one of my catchers at San Francisco, and then when I became a manager, he was a broadcaster, and I got him. Anyway, he ended up being one of my coaches, and then he became a manager of the Diamondbacks that one year. He called me to come to spring training and help him and all this, and he gave me they won the world. That was his first year, and he won the world championship. Only 2 guys done that. The other guy was the guy managed the Yankees so long, Ralph Howard.
Thank you again for your Casey Stengel stories, talking about Gil Hodges, your career, and sharing the time with us. And actually, we're taping right now from 74th Street and 5th Avenue. I guess only a few blocks from where you used to live in Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly, yeah. A lot of times when I was with the Brooklyn Dodgers, a lot of times we'd go out to eat, a bunch of us, 4 or 5 of the ball players and our wives and all. We'd go to different restaurants. And a lot of time, we went to pay the check. And the owner would say, it's already been paid for. And we said, who did it? We want to thank him. He said, well, they already gone. We first tell them we even met who did it. That's just the way the fans were. Well, they were unbelievable. In fact, the first game I won at Ebbets Field, and standing in the outfield the next day, and I'm talking to Carl Erskine, and he's telling me, he said, why you pitched so good? He said, you didn't have a chance to sit around and get scared. But he said, and then when I was talking to him, some guy in the stands hollered, he said, hey, Craig, you bum, you'll be back in AAA in another week. And I looked around, Carl said, don't say nothing. He's that's a compliment. He means it well. That's what they call you a bum. They loved you. Yeah, but okay, I was very fortunate. I think back at my career, and I just, I was living in Durham, North Carolina, where they made the movie Bull Durham. And as a kid, I used to stand out behind we couldn't pay to get in the ballpark, and we'd stand out and get foul balls. And if you got a ball, you could go in get free passing. But if we got a good ball, we'd keep it to play with. But I'll never forget that. And I said, boy, if I could just play for the Durham Bulls, I'd be the happiest guy in the world. And here I'd done all of that stuff with a lot of help, and I was very fortunate.
Again, thank you for sharing your memories. We really appreciate it. We wish you well. Say hello to your wife.
I sure will, and thank you.
And you get a free dinner if you ever get to Brooklyn.
Well, tell all my fans back there hello, and I still think about them. They're the greatest fans in the world.